Hello and welcome once again to The Blueprints. This is Canada's Conservative Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament, Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock, with new content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We ask that you like, comment, subscribe, share this program. Today's show is going to be something amazing for you. We want the eyes and ears to see and listen to it. You can also download it and listen to it on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. You name it, it is out there. I think a lot of us have been concerned about what we're going to talk about later today. It is the rising crime rate. 32% is the increase since Justin Trudeau took power in violent crimes. This is something that is surging across the country. To talk about that, we have the one and only Larry Brock, Member of Parliament, Brantford Brant. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you so much, Jamie. It's always a pleasure to attend.
We talk about this a lot, and it's very sad that I have to keep bringing you on to talk about the rising violent crime rate in this city. It just seems like we're out of control. Probably two of the most recent ones that I think hit home for a lot of people was the knife attack in which a 16-year-old boy was killed in the Kill Street subway in Toronto. The next being that awful stabbing in Vancouver in front of the Starbucks, or in the Starbucks, where a gentleman with his family asked a person not to vape near his child. And next thing you know, he's got a knife in his stomach. What do you say to that? What the hell's going on?
It's a disturbing trend. And what we are seeing right across this country, ripped from the headlines, is a disturbing pattern that I personally have not seen for a significant period of time. There was a point in time, Jamie, where murders, I'm talking decades ago, used to be confined to gangland shootings. You have maybe some domestic homicides. They tended to be more targeted. And what I find happening right now, which should be concerning to every Canadian, and I know it certainly is the randomness of these killings for no apparent reason whatsoever. As you've indicated, the father of a young child, literally on a Sunday afternoon in a good part of Vancouver, simply asking permission, probably politely, "Sir, do you mind not vaping near my child?" And don't know what was going on in the mind of the killer, but we have seen some images. I've seen the arrival of the police on some video on social media, and it would appear that the killer himself showed absolutely zero remorse for what he had done.
He just kind of looked at his phone.
Yes, didn't run away.
No, didn't.
Wasn't concerned about being detected or being caught or being filmed. He saw people with their cameras out and their phones out. He knew he was being captured and freely gave himself up to the police. Now, I don't know what the background was of this individual. I'm sure that in time we'll probably learn more. But it displays a growing concern that every Canadian should have, that no matter who you are or where you may find yourself to be, anywhere in this country, you run the risk of being a random victim of a serious violent offense or possibly a homicide victim. That's how concerning it is. In Toronto, and it's not just large cities. It's not just Toronto, it's not Montreal, it's not Vancouver, it's right across this country.
Well, look at the police officer, the OPP officer, just went to help someone who went into the ditch before Christmas. And next thing you know, he's shot and killed, right? Like that was rural Ontario.
This is rural Ontario. This is literally on my doorstep in the riding of Brantford Brant. It was just outside of Brantford Brant. Again, middle of the day, a police officer doing what police officers are expected to do, to come to the aid of what appears to be a motorist in distress. And for his kind generosity and his service to the community, he ends up being shot dead. So it's a disturbing trend. The lack of respect for human life, the lack of respect for the dignity of human lives is a disturbing trend that unfortunately the Liberal government doesn't seem to care enough to introduce the legislation to address this growing problem. And quite frankly, in my view, Jamie, this is not a partisan viewpoint. It should not be. I have been advocating for criminal justice reform pretty much my entire professional life. There was only so much I could do as a representative of the Ministry of the Attorney General. I was looking to make more of an imprint on the national stage. One of the reasons why I chose to leave that profession, become a politician, was the avenues available to me to advocate, but more importantly, to introduce private members' bills to address the shortcomings in our criminal justice system. You know, there's a concept that prosecutors and judges often use, and that's the whole concept of general and specific deterrence. So a function of a sentence is to not only send a message to the offender that these are the consequences to you should you continue along your criminal path, but a general message to the community that there are going to be significant consequences to you should you find yourself in conflict. Unfortunately, what we are seeing in this country, what we are reading about in terms of the sentences, what we are seeing by our own Liberal government softening its approach to criminal justice, it's sending the wrong message to the community. In my view, sending a message that there are no longer significant life-changing consequences to criminal behavior. When you see serious, repeat, violent offenders being arrested, being released, often in the same day, promising to abide by conditions, the paper that they sign is only worth essentially the paper itself. The whole concept of trust and promises are failing. And when they fail, it's putting our communities and it's putting victims at risk.
Do you think that is kind of the reason why we're seeing this randomness? Like, even if you think back to the swarming of those teenage girls to that homeless person, again, someone probably minding his own business, and all of a sudden he's a murder victim. Is that why you think, like, we're getting these it just seems an increase? While 32% violent crime is up since Trudeau took office, but do you think that plays a part in it?
It is, Jamie, but I think you need to take a look at some of the other external factors. And this is something I've seen personally in my own life. The impact of isolation during the pandemic, I think, has had a significant impact on the psyche of young people in this country. I personally saw it with my own children. I saw depression that I had never seen before. I saw concerns and just hopelessness on behalf of my children. They couldn't continue with their favorite sport. They're competitive swimmers. They couldn't hang out at the mall. They couldn't do sleepovers with their friends. And it was very concerning. And the only sort of recourse they had was the cyberspace occupying by social media. And we all know the dangers of social media. You can be a social media warrior and essentially say whatever you want behind the protection of your home, and there are no consequences. So I think that there is an element of having people just simply being desensitized to the whole concept of violence and harm. We're being bombarded by violent images on social media, violence in video games, an increase in violence in Hollywood in terms of our movies, etc. All designed originally to be entertainment, but when you take isolation and you absorb yourself with these violent issues and forces, I think it alters your perception of reality. In what particular universe would it ever be acceptable that a group of random teenage girls, and this is the example that you've given me about the swarming in Toronto, these were not lifelong friends. These were a bunch of individuals that found each other on social media. And whatever that particular group was called, I don't know, but they thought it was completely acceptable to engage in this swarming, bullying, atmosphere to a complete stranger to the point of arming themselves with knives and using violence and showing no concern, no remorse. In fact, I read a report in the Toronto Sun probably about 3 or 4 weeks after their arrest, and a number of them were still in custody at that point, going through the bail process. And the reporter who was watching it remarked that they were actually laughing inside the prisoner's dock. These are teenage girls who should have been socialized to appreciate what is right, what is wrong. I presume came from responsible backgrounds and had responsible parents, but completely showed the opposite of what we would expect human beings to display in these circumstances. These girls are facing the potential of up to 7 years of secure custody. And as a teenager, that is a substantial amount of time, okay, to be stolen from you. And so it's just, in my view, the whole concept of responsibility and consequences mean nothing in today's society, and we got to change that, and I know Conservatives have a plan to change that. Where the government is failing, where I say this is not a partisan issue, was in my moment, the galvanizing crystallization of this rallying cry across the nation, where you had police chiefs of all different backgrounds, you had municipal leaders of all different backgrounds, you had police associations, but more importantly, you had every premier of all our provinces and territories, which, as you know, Jamie, represent the full spectrum on the political ideology scale, all galvanizing together, saying something must be done. This was the line that was crossed, that we will not tolerate this anymore. And one would have thought that the Liberal government, with their large mass of public service employees, particularly in the Department of Justice, would have taken immediate steps to address those recommendations in that Premier's letter. They did nothing. They telegraphed that they would consult again with the premiers, they would consult again with the provincial and territorial ministers of justice to come up with a working plan. Now we're getting the slow little drip from Minister Lametti that changes are coming, that we are listening, and we think that we can improve community safety and holding these offenders responsible. But here we are, several months removed from that unfortunate death of Constable Priscilla, that OPP officer, and nothing is done. So you contrast that the government, which should be doing something, their number one responsibility is to keep us safe.
Absolutely.
Okay? They are failing. Every single day, they are failing in their number one responsibility. But what are we doing as Conservatives? We have our leader going across this nation every single weekend, essentially getting the blessing of his family to be away from his young family, 2 young children, to make sure that he is listening to as many interest groups that he can, talking to police chiefs, talking to other interested groups right across this country, offering a vision as to when he becomes Prime Minister, what he will do. Most recently in the House, he issued a press release, I believe it was this week, Jamie, where he indicated that a Poilievre government will take immediate steps to undo the damaging impacts to Bill C-5, and I know I've spoken at great length about Bill C-5, which essentially eliminated all the mandatory minimum penalties for our most serious offenses, given the offenders the luxury of serving their sentences in the comfort of their own homes. He's going to tackle that. He's going to address the consequences of Bill C-75, which instituted, in our view, this catch and release mentality, this principle of restraint. Now, as a lawyer, I still have to be mindful, Jamie, and I don't want your our listeners to get the wrong impression. As a lawyer, I strongly and will defend with every breath our constitutional rights, the charter rights that we have that apply to every single Canadian, regardless of whatever criminal charge that you find yourself involved in. You have that presumption of innocence. You have the presumption that you can receive reasonable bail. But the charter does not guarantee bail.
Right.
And while some individuals, even charged with first-degree murder, do get released on bail, there is a process. And that process, in my view, was significantly weakened by Bill 75. And I like to think of the criminal justice system as a pendulum. That pendulum, in my view, should be squarely in the middle at all times, where you have the respect for the charter and the respect for the constitutional rights of the accused, but you also balance that. You don't belittle it, and you don't give a greater emphasis to community safety and the safety of victims. Unfortunately, Bill 75 moved that pendulum towards the accused at the expense of the community. And I've been advocating for a balanced approach to our criminal justice system ever since I became a politician, and that's what a Poilievre majority government, a new majority government in this country, will strive to do. So in addition to that pronouncement by our leader, Pierre Poilievre, we have two of our colleagues as well who are trying to make meaningful changes. Most recently this week, we had our colleague Pierre Paulus introduce Bill C-323, which is designed to claw back the impacts of Bill C-5. I don't anticipate we're going to get that passed, but at least it telegraphs to Canadians that we, as His Majesty's loyal opposition, are not going to sit idly by waiting whenever the government deems it appropriate to make the adjustment to our laws to keep our community safe. So he has done something. Our colleague Frank Caputo, another former Crown attorney through Bill C-313, is also addressing some significant changes to the bail regime dealing with repeat serial offenders, particularly with prohibited weapons. So I want the readership, the listeners, to truly appreciate that we as Conservatives have always believed in good government, law, and order, and we will always follow that edict, and we are taking concrete steps to deal with that.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. No, I don't know. I don't want you to get too far into the head of a Liberal, but at the same time, I know the calls and emails I'm getting in my office. I can only imagine what you're getting. I have no doubt Liberal MPs are getting the same concerns being raised to them. What do you think their thinking is? Why do you think they are so slow to react? What is kind of their motive on all of this?
I wish I had the answer to that, because I would well imagine, and let's face it, we're here because a majority of individuals in our respective ridings chose us as the representative. I never forget for 1 minute that I represent all of my riding, just as you do.
Absolutely.
Those who voted for us, those who didn't vote for us. In fact, I try, even as a politician, to work harder for those individuals who actually come out and say, you know what, I didn't vote for you, but what are you going to do about this issue? What are you going to do about that issue? And sometimes I get, individual concerns that my constituency office can deal with, but also national concerns. So I try to engage in conversations to show to them that we have a different approach. We differ substantially from the Liberals. So to your point, what is happening in those liberal-held ridings? I am hearing because both of us, Jamie, through this particular medium, we've developed quite a following.
Yeah, we have, absolutely.
And I love the fact that a lot of people love this Blueprint podcast and are sharing it and
I think
encouraging.
they love you and they tolerate me, I think.
Well, I think, you and I, we work well together.
Yes,
we really do. We're both passionate individuals, and we're talking the language that a lot of people want us to talk about. But I think what it does is, I'm now hearing from members of Liberal-held ridings who unfortunately are sharing with me very distressing information that they are raising these issues with their Liberal MPs and are not getting a call back, are not getting a response back to emails, are being denied the opportunity of visiting and sitting down and talking with their MPs. It's almost as if they don't matter. And I find that disturbing as a politician who should represent all. Not everyone's going to agree with us. Hopefully most of them will. But I accept the fact that I can't convince everyone that my position on certain issues is the only appropriate position. We have that ability in this democracy to share differing views. But I think it comes down to a level of service that we as Conservatives do differently than Liberal members. And in my view, it's the cult of Trudeau. It's the mentality that these are our position, these are our talking points, and you must defend it at all costs. And I think it's really doing a disservice to those individuals in their ridings who are as concerned as we are. As I said at the top, this is not a partisan issue. It should never be a partisan issue. Just like the other headline that's dominating the news right now, this whole concept of foreign election interference should never be a partisan issue. We should all stand united as Canadians to defend our democracy, just as we should all stand as Canadians and demand safer streets and accountability in our criminal justice system. And I will continue to fight every day for that.
I don't know what more to say after that, but as you know, the guests always get the last word. I don't know if you want to use that as your last word or say anything else.
I think I just gave you my last word.
I think that was pretty good. That was pretty good. Larry Brock, Brantford Brant is the riding. He's the member of Parliament for that great community, and we do appreciate your time. We give you the show out of awareness, so you know what's going on. And we ask because of that you like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. There are eyes and ears that need to get this information. You can also tell them they can download it on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, you name it. It is out there. New content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, Larry. Thank you to you watching and listening. Until next week, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's the Blueprint.